So stuck, man.
Or no, it looks like it's dominant down at the bottom. Never mind. So vice versa, what I just said.
Okay.
That's why I was just gonna let you keep going.
Yeah. Hey, listen, y'all got each
You
other.
knew what you were saying.
Yeah.
There's just a cheat sheet down there. That's all.
Come on, man.
What we looking at? What we looking at right here?
That's rust resistant.
That's homozygous recessive.
That's gonna be
your.
That's not gonna be bun resistant. The homozygous recessive won't be.
So when you look at both these sides, can you come up with an idea or give me a description of what we're looking at here? Just for this blue side.
It's definitely burnt resistant. Like, that's the dominant trait, is what I see.
Elaborate a little bit more on what what do we see? You mean, like I said, I see family tree and I see them.
Well, describe. So as far as the individual parents,
two different inbred lines.
Well, if you were to describe just the overall two different parents that are being used.
Yeah, it's two different growth patterns for the same lineage.
What about the traits? Something specific to the traits on each of these. Let's look at this one first.
They started homozygous.
Yeah.
What was that?
Homozygous, recessive, and dominant in the beginning.
So they started with landrace, like they started with a pure landrace homozygous strain at that point. That's at least, or whatever it is. That's what it looks like.
Well, I don't know.
Like what Mendel did with his peas. You know what I mean? Like he took true homozygous strains or cultivars or whatever.
Because over here we got heterozygosity.
Yeah, because he crossed homozygous.
So like on the birth line, you got a dominant B all the way up the line. If you look over to the other line, it's not dominant all the way up the line.
There you go. That's so one of them looks like it's a recessive parent. The other looks like it's more of a dominant parent. Same thing on this side. That's exactly what I was looking at, dude. What I was wanting to point out. What does that tell you about those two parents? Anything in particular? Or?
And they can make babies.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, but like Dude said, one is recessive, and one is pretty much dominant all the way down. So one thing that these do have in common is that it passed down that dominant B every time. It definitely passed that dominant B down every time, except on this side where it was consistently
Except on
recessive.
that side, they consistently crossed it with a plant that didn't have it, so that the offspring that did come out with it was guaranteed to have that dominant trait to pass through.
So it's dominant. It's going to be dominant no matter what you do.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So figure 10, using breeding to stack multiple traits into a single line. The program involves backcrossing two separate lines, one for each trait, and breeding the resulting lines with desirable traits together to get a plant variety with both desired traits. Recreated by M. Sutter, 2023, with permission. In order to meet this objective, the breeder can use different numbers of backcrosses, 1 to 6, to add as much or as little of the recurrent parent as they think is necessary. A backcross 1 population is preferred by many breeders to a simple 3-way cross, A times B times C, which may have too much variation. In this case, A, B, and C represent elite lines or varieties. Let's look at strengths and weaknesses. There are both strengths and weaknesses of the backcross breeding method. What do you guys think might be some strengths or weaknesses when we think in terms of backcross breeding methods? Despicable, what up?
What up, Daz?
What up, man? I don't know if y'all can hear me. They cut my internet off, so I'm on like 2 bars of service.
This is actually the clearest I've ever heard you in the history of this fucking Discord.
Because I don't have my AirPods in.
It's the clearest I've ever
Yo,
heard
can you share this website with me? Because I missed the beginning of this. I didn't even see the message in Instagram.
No, you good.
Check this out.
No, you good. We yeah, for sure. I'll post them in
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I got 2 articles that I pulled from my stash. Right now we just going over some advanced backcrossing methods, and we jumped into strengths and weaknesses. There are both strengths and weaknesses of backcross breeding methods, and I wanted to know if you guys could probably think what you think might be some strengths and might be some weaknesses.
Bigger as a strength, weakness. What would be a weakness? More older.
No,
I think it could be a
perfection.
strength or weakness, man. So
Inbred
you can lock
perfection
in
is bigger.
traits, bro. You can lock in traits real fast, but that could be a good or a bad thing.
Okay.
Properly executed, the backcross breeding methods allow all desirable characteristics of the recurring parent to be recovered, with the possible exception of characters governed by genes tightly linked to the genes being transferred. Let's go over that again. So properly executed, the backcross allows the desirable characteristics of the recurring parent to be recovered. This is why we run back to backcrossing when we suffer from inbreeding depression, because we are able to recover those desirable traits.
Basically, if you have like if you chose the elite phenotype as that true parent, then when you do that backcross, it should be beneficial if you chose properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It should like an energy boost, like a 5-hour energy.
Mm-hmm. Times 10, yeah.
Yeah, more like a shot of cocaine.
Okay. Mm-hmm. We'll just go ahead
The
and
drawback to that is that if you chose the wrong one,
Yeah, exactly. That's what
Yeah,
I'm saying. Choose the wrong one, you're
you
fucked.
just did the exact opposite of what you were trying to do.
there you go.
like your little spray bomb in the basement.
Hey,
Because
man.
realistically, if you didn't choose an elite, like a truly good parent to start with and then do the back crossing with, every time you back cross to it, you're going to be bringing back weaker genetics or mutations or whatever it was that, yeah.
There you go.
Could
So
be a good thing, could be a bad thing. Double-edged sword.
it's always how I describe. It's like juggling, man. It's like walking down the street and holding these 3, 4, 5
Yeah, until
basketballs.
you try it and you have data to back it up. I mean, the horse breeders do it all the time. They'll inbreed the fuck out of their horses, but you can only go so far. So like, you have to know where the breaking point is.
Mm-hmm. Properly executed, the backcross breeding methods allow all the desirable characteristics of the recurring parent to be recovered, with the possible exception of characters governed by genes tightly linked to genes being transferred. This may be considered a strength. Backcross method provides a certain and precise way of making predictable gains, with little possibility that uncontrolled segregation will produce a subtle weaknesses in the variety. The backcross method provides a certain precise way of making predictable gains, with little possibility that uncontrolled segregation will produce subtle weaknesses in the variety. It's pretty deep. It's the real deal, man.
Yeah, that's like in horses. That's like unlocking the golden key because you really like are trying to go back to like certain, and you have data like 7%, 14%, but you literally are looking for like a lottery ticket. Literally, it's crazy. But I can see in plants that you can do so many because you can do, like you said, 50, 100 at a time.
Same characteristic may also be considered a weakness because the method sets an upper limit which is equal to the
Yeah,
recurring parent's phenotype.
I heard limit. So limit means stop.
Mm-hmm. You only as good as the recurring parent. You can't get no better when you think in terms of specific traits that we are looking to fix. Those traits are exactly what they're gonna be, and that's the upper room. As far as can't get no better than the parent, and that's what they're saying right there. Is basically it sets that limitation on you. This limit will often be lower than the progress that is possible with other lines when segregation is not rigidly controlled. This phenomenon is known as yield lag and is graphically depicted in figure 11. We see right here. This is series 2 would be with this breaking point, this ceiling, this limit that we reach, and then just boom. As to where when we are using other outcross methods that we are familiar with of just going down the line, you don't have a ceiling or limitation that you're going to fall into. You can just keep going up. And series 1 shows the gradual percent improvements reached over time for a given breeding program that is active for 6 years. In contrast, Series 2 is put through a backcross program at year 4, where its percent improvement plateaus. Yep. This is 6 years and we're still going up versus 4 years and we've already stopped going up at 4-year mark. The backcrossing method remains an efficient tool for transferring one or a few genes into established crop varieties. With each succeeding backcross generation, a greater proportion of the recurrent non-target genes remain along with the donor's gene of interest. There are several considerations and other absolute requirements to take into account when developing a backcross program to ensure a successful end result. In this lesson, the focus will be on the backcross method, which is a form of recurrent hybridization, repeated crossing to a single variety where a superior characteristic may be added to an otherwise desirable variety. In this method, the breeder has considerable control over the genetic variation in the segregating population in which selections are to be made. Backcross method has been used extensively for transferring qualitative characters which clear phenotypes that are easily to identify in cross progeny. All right, so that's kind of a quick definition of qualitative characters. Characters with clear phenotypes that are easily to identify in cross progeny. So that's language for you. Qualitative characters, such as disease resistance. It is an effect in both self and cross-pollinated crop species. To better understand the applications of backcrossing, the gene for leaf rust resistance in wheat will be used as an example. Figure 1 shows the visible symptoms of leaf rust in a susceptible wheat. The left picture, leaves are resistant. They have a small amount of rust. The plant on the right is covered with rust. It is susceptible. And you can see the two different comparisons. The one on the left being resistant to rust and the one on the right being susceptible to the rust trait. So, Figure 2 illustrates how the backcross procedure can be used to move leaf rust resistance from one variety to a susceptible variety. Little r, recessive. Big R, homozygous dominant. Big R, little r, heterozygous dominant. And little r, homozygous recessive in this case. And we already got familiar with this right here. So look at that. Now we know exactly what we're looking at.
Why do they go so far down if they have a homozygous up top?
We said if they have homozygous at the top.
If your donor parent up there is homozygous, why do they go so far down? Unless, of course, you didn't have that parent. Like, I don't have gushers, but I still have dead ops. You know what I mean? So I can back cross to that. So I guess it's like, say I don't have that parent or I chose the wrong parent. That's what this would be kind of an example of. But if I have that other parent that's homozygous for the trait I want, I would want to back cross to that instead versus, you know what I mean? Because then I would be able to bring that trait out a lot sooner instead of, you see what I'm saying? Because it seems like they're back crossing over here to the one that's homozygous for the traits, the one on the right? They're not back crossing the one on the left. This parent on the left, the donor parent.
So, because Okay, I see you. Okay, I see where you getting confused. All right, so what's happening here is that this this parent, recurring parent, is gonna be used. We're infused. We're adding the traits to this parent.
Got it.
So this is the adapted variety now, meaning it's adapting the new.
This is almost like, say, you had your I'm going to just use wheat. You had your one cultivar on one side, and then on the left, you used maybe a landrace because it was homozygous mold resistant, you know what I mean, or rust resistant, whatever it was. But you're not looking to bring so much of those traits out of that other than that resistance. You're trying to keep this parent right here as a recurring parent.
Exactly, because just because
that makes sense.
Just because it's recessive for this particular trait is our primary breeder parent, which is the one we're going to use for whatever our project is.
I see what you're saying. Like, really, the only thing we're trying to pull out of this donor parent is that resistance. Everything else we're trying to keep more in line with that one parent.
Exactly.
But we're trying to have that parent. Like, we're basically trying to recreate that parent, but with resistance.
Yeah, he's not the recurrent because he's only here to give us that trait, add that trait.
I 100% what you're saying. And so that's where the confusion was with me, because I'm like, well, if you're just trying to make that, dominant, backcross into that parent right there.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But I see what you're saying, because what we're trying to do is take that one trait, but all the other traits of the other coin.
Exactly. We don't want to lose anything else. We just want to add that one.
We want to take everything Dead Ops has and then add mold resistance or pest resistance.
Exactly.
I get what you're saying. No, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Now I know why they went so far down.
Yeah, exactly.
In my head, why would you? But now I'm like, well, you have to, because what you're trying to pull out is not at all in that parent. So you gotta find that parent. Yeah, I see what you're saying. All right.
Yeah, so it went all the way down. Backcross 1, backcrossed again, backcrossed again, and backcrossed again. So at the end of it all, this adaptive variety will now have that trait that we want for rust resistance in this case. Which you did
with also keeping everything else. We were trying to do that one thing.
Keeping everything else without dropping. That's what I was saying. Don't drop nothing else. We don't have to drop all of those. We can just go pick up the one trait, do some work, go pick up the one trait. Really getting. It's like almost getting other people to do the work for you. It's like you're getting these generations to do the work, and then they'll bring back the trait you need, and then you're gone. Thank you. Have a good day.
Now, what if, for example, you were starting your line work and you got to your F1s? Could you use an F1 as a reoccurring parent instead of? I mean, I guess you'd be kind of starting, but because I know you're, so using an F1 to backcross versus using the original parent.
So I think what he's asking is
the older the sire, the genetics don't pass down at the same percentages. There's a sliding scale.
I guess what I'm saying is
everything is sliding scale.
In your F1s, you found that almost perfect replica of that parent that you wanted to be the reoccurring parent, but it also had that mold resistance that you wanted. So it was already that one that you wanted. To lock that, so say you kept that, put it to the side, and then you got down to your F3s. Could you cross back to that F1 and still lock it down the same way, or would you still need? I'm just curious. I don't know. Can an F1 replace that reoccurring parent at all?
No.
Or would it always have to be the reoccurring? I'm just curious. I guess in my head.
That's a good question. No, that's a good question. No, I'm sitting here thinking. I mean, you can. What you would do is. I mean, you could introduce traits like that. Well, no. I mean, because they'll already
He would
have
have
those.
to, he would have to go back to the seed stock from the reoccurring parent
I don't know. I don't
if
know.
he didn't have the parent around. So like for example, if you're doing dead ops times the white gutters, if he goes to do a back cross, he could use dead ops to back cross, even though it's not the same one he pollinated with.
Well, I still have that one around anyway, and I collected pollen from it, so I'm not worried about that. But I don't know. I was just looking at it as like, so say because it seemed like they were using the reoccur. I don't know. It just seemed like if you found exactly what you're looking for in the F1 generation and use that as the back cross, how would that be any different than going back to the original parent? If it was just like the original parent, plus had the resistance.
Because you found what you were looking for, your goal.
So like yeah, but at that point, if you found what you were looking for, in order to continue that and make it to where those are all stable traits throughout your population, you're obviously going to have to continue to breed those out together. So I'm saying, like, if you chose that one and use that as your back cross parent, like that's your reoccurring parent now.
I get it. Use the F1 though, yeah, you would have to continue on.
Okay. I see what you're saying. You're saying
so okay. I don't have gushers. I don't have gushers. Say I found one that was just like the gushers parent.
You basically asking, is it necessary to go all the way back to the original mother and father?
If, say, I don't have the original mother, I have the original father, but what if I'm looking for traits out of the original mother, but I don't have her? I guess that's where can I use the F1?
If you
say I don't, because I don't have gushers. Like that's a perfect example. I don't have gushers.
Yeah, he's looking.
I can't go back to that original mother.
He's looking for the unicorn on the other side.
Yeah, so if I found the unicorn, obviously it would take me, but if say I found that unicorn in the F1, this is exactly what I was looking for. Yeah, I could sell her, but if I wanted to actually stabilize that into those traits, not just like effeminized, but if I wanted to continue as a regular seed population, could I use that F1 as my back cross point since I don't have the mom?
Then those are.
And it came from her. Then she's technically the mom. I know what you're saying, dude. Where it's the daughter of the parent generation that became off of it. But if that daughter is still now the grandparent of that F3.
Yeah, but the parent is done. Parent's lost. So
but that's what I'm trying to say. Is say I found in the F1 something that was like an exact replica of the mom.
Yeah,
like,
okay, yeah.
But had that trait I was trying to get out of the dead off too. Couldn't I use that as my back cross point?
Yeah, down the line, yeah. Not initially. I wouldn't.
Well, yeah, like I wouldn't immediately. I'd go further down to maybe F3.
Yeah, I'm thinking of horse. I'm not,
yeah, you did. I was thinking more of like trying to, and I haven't. I think I found one that I really like, but she's still different than the gushers. That's why I'm still popping, F1 seeds, just looking. And if I by chance find anything, I was just curious. Like I don't know, just for my own education.
No, those are all good questions. Because I got your mind going tonight.
I had to step out of the room because I had to ask that question. I knew I'd be loud as fuck.
The whole pedigree part is like fascinating because I get it in the horse racing, but in like the Wii game, I'm still kind of searching. I'm still trying to.
So what it seems like is if you really do get a good understanding and have really good knowledge, and you have a place to go find that knowledge, there's not really a wrong way to do the back crossing as long as you are doing it with a purpose for a reason. You know what I mean? Like not just willy nilly. Oh, I just like this one's on the back cross to that. Like. What was the reason why? Are you what trait are you trying to stabilize? Because once you back cross it to that one, now you're really bringing that trait out. If that's not, you can't do it wrong. But if what you're trying to do is back cross to stabilize certain traits. then there's not really a wrong way to do it. Like, could you even just back cross? Say you got to F3, could you just back cross to F2? Because in that F2 you found some crazy keeper? Or would you want to go further back, at least 1 or 2 generations?
I don't know, man. Every time you back cross, don't you like inbred depression? Like, doesn't that creep in? Because to me, you're inbreeding.
You back cross to bring back.
Like,
So
you
this
like
is the
an
thing: is if you
orphan,
had.
you can only go
That's
so
why
far.
that's why he mentioned earlier about if you start with the right choice. Say you chose a parent, like your back cross, your reoccurring parent is a vigorous plant. Then when you back cross to it, you're going to be bringing back vigor into it. But if you chose one that didn't have vigor, then you're right. If you say you were to back cross to that parent, and it didn't have vigor, then you would be taking more vigor out of the next set of progeny.
In contrast, if the genes for rust resistant have been recessive rather than dominant, then the introduced resistant gene is only carried in a heterozygote. It would not be detected throughout the backcross program. After each backcross, one will have to self the heterozygote in order to produce resistant plants in the progeny. These resistant plants are then backcrossed to the recurrent parent. You see what they did there? Why would they self it if it's a heterozygote? What's happening is because we know whatever traits the female is carrying, it's gonna double up on them and push them dominant. So once we back cross to the recurrent parent, move.
So what I see is they went once, they found what they were looking for, they went again twice, they doubled up on it, and they kept going, and then they were done.
Mm-hmm. In the F1, many loci will be heterozygous. Those loci, which had different genes, alleles coming from the two parents. These loci will include the gene of interest as well as many other loci containing genes for other traits. With backcrossing, homozygosity for the alleles from the recurrent parent will increase at the same rate as seen with the approach of homozygosity with selfing, one form of inbreeding. The formula for calculating this rate is given below. Here we're looking at a homozygous chromosome, pair of chromosomes.
It's funny. I look at the formula. You look at the cell structure.
Yeah.
It makes me laugh.
The lines we can identify as loci. The letters we can identify as traits or alleles rather. I'm sorry. We can identify them as alleles, and the line will be the loci. And if we have two alleles that are identical, like over here, A and B and B and C and C, this is completely homozygous, complete uniformity we see here. Now, if we had half of these, or a little, and just one, then that particular allele would be homozygous. But the entire chromosome pair would not be homozygous to each other. And over here we got heterozygous, which we know. Each one completely opposite, which is normal in how things work in an outcross. These are all your alleles and your lokis for the particular chromosome. Chromosome pair homozygous for a gene will have the same allele for that gene on each chromosome. Chromosome pair heterozygous for the gene will have a different allele on each chromosome. In the F2 generation, half the plants are also homozygous. Let's think back to our original example of least rust resistance. One of the goals of backcrossing is to remove the donor parent's genes except the one of interest. Are the other genes are non-target genes, and increase the recurrent parent genes except for the gene of disinterest. The amount of remaining genetic information or non-target genes on average from the recurrent parent is reduced by 50% with each backcross. Meaning non-target genes. So 50% is always the magic number when we are closely inbreeding. When we're doing that type of close inbreeding, we can think of 50% either plus or negative, one way forward or back. We going one way or the other. And the calculation for this data is blah, 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 blah. Percentage of non-target genes from the donor parent equals half, blah, 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 where N is the number of backcross. All right, so to give us a little map here.
Maybe the rust-resistant variety isn't, it just doesn't have any of the traits other than the rust-resistant. I mean, I'm guessing that this Pawnee, I think that's a pecan or I think Pawnee is a pecan, but it's probably that the Pawnee has, the right flavored nut or fruit or whatever it is that they're looking for. It's a big producer. It's an early flower. Like, it has all these different things, but it's not resistant to something that they're having issues with. So that's why it's the recurring parent, because that resistant variety just doesn't have any other traits they're looking for other than the resistance. That'd be what I can gather from this.
Yeah. So we'll get a better understanding as to why linkage. Linkage is going to be the language we're going to take home tonight. Linkage, and we're going to add that to our repertoire, our arsenal of language. Linkage. However, the rate at which genes entering across from the donor parent, who's rust resistant, the red, are eliminated during backcrossing will be influenced by linkage. Linkage is a term used to describe genes that do not independently assort. One of the requirements for Mendelian inheritance.
Mendelian inheritance. Independent assortment.
That's right. Linked genes tend to stay together, and unlinked genes independently assort. The physical basis for linkage is how close the genes are to each other on the chromosome. If genes are far apart or on different chromosomes, they are unlinked and independently assorted. If they are near to each other, the chromosome, they are more frequently passed on together than separately. Linkage is measured by the recombination frequencies or map distance factors such as centromere location and chromosome structure. Abnormalities can reduce crossover events during meiosis. For example, if an undesirable allele for drawing is linked to rust resistance and selection is only for rust resistance, that the other one tends to be brought along the F1 as well. However, when reintroducing R each backcross, the number of opportunities for crossing over between the R and the little d loci occur. Therefore, the probability of eliminating D is 1 to 1, where n equals number of backcrosses, P equals recombination frequency between loci. It should be noted that if D and R are close together, small map distance, it will be very hard to select R. Is eliminated. Rarely do breeders know all the traits which are linked to the gene of interest in backcrossing program. That's what I'm saying. That could be the tricky thing too. Genes that are attached to each other. Alleles that are linked together, linked genes.
Which could be a good thing, but could be a bad thing. Like some resistance, might be also linked to some funky mutation on the plant that's an undesirable trait. You may have to either deal with that undesirable trait or find a way to get rid of it at the same time as hold on to that resistance.
Yeah, that's a fact.
But yeah, that makes sense. Genes that are linked together, and I mean that could be like, the purple color on a plant is always linked to a certain terpene that you may not want. You may not want that terpene ever be in your plant, but if you have purple in there, it's always going to show up. Or, yeah, that's crazy. Hollow man, science is crazy.
Genes less than 50 map units apart are considered linked. The closer genes are located on the chromosome, the more likely they are to be passed on to offspring together.
Wouldn't it be cool to take some dead ops, throw it into a CRISPR machine, and sequence the DNA, and truly look at everything that was in the genome? You know what I mean? That'd be so cool. So it's one thing when you're trying to, guess or use things that you can. Phenotypical expressions, for example, things that you can see with your eyes, but to really know and be like, yeah, this is homozygous for this trait on its actual, chromosome.
First of all, backcrossing is most easily conducted if the character being added is easily selectable. To be easily selected, it needs to be simply inherited. Damn. Although the backcross approach may be applied to quantitative traits, dominant and easily recognized in the hybrid plant. And show awnless wheat versus wheat with awns that they select for. It's much easier to dominant trait. You can see a more difficult trait to select for is the bread-making quality of wheat. Mixograph curves are used to determine the strength of the dough, which affects this trait. 0 is considered weak, and 7 is considered strong. In this situation, 4 is most desirable. Wow. There are also some absolute requirements for a successful backcrossing program. First is a satisfactory recurrent parent. Good candidates for the recurrent parents are those varieties or inbred lines that have maintained their importance for many years despite the release of numerous improved varieties intended to replace them. Sounds like a land race to me. A recurrent parent that has maintained its importance is one that remains high yielding in comparison to other lines over time. Remember that it often takes 5 to 7 years to develop a backcross line. In that 5 to 7 years, new cultivars are developed. If the new cultivars with higher yield are better than the recurrent parent with the new trait, no one will grow the recurrent parent with the new trait. Thus, the time and effort to backcross the new trait into the recurrent parent will be wasted, except as the parent to develop other new cultivars. Secondly, required is a useful gene that is unaffected by environment or being in new genetic background. High heritability of the character being transferred is important. Transfer is easiest when the character can be identified readily in hybrid populations by visual selection or by simple tests. There has been some success in dealing with quantitative traits through backcrossing. However, like all other methods, it depends on the ability of the breeder to distinguish between genetic and environmental variability and to select those individuals that are desirable for genetic reasons. General agricultural worth of the donor parent need not be a great concern. Selection of the donor or the non-recurrent parent is almost exclusively on the basis that it exhibits the character in a particularly intense form. This is important since often the presence of modifier genes in the genetic background of the recurrent parent cause some intensity to be lost, even though the most stringent selection has been practiced throughout the backcrossing program. Final absolute requirement is a sufficient number of backcrosses must be used to reconstitute the recurrent parent to a high degree. Recovery of the recurrent parent is a function of the number of backcrosses and the effectiveness of selection for recurrent parent type in the early generations. Usually six backcrosses with selection for type in the early generations has proved sufficient. However, in wide crosses and or with undesirable linkages, a greater number of backcrosses may be necessary. Remember that in practice, the objective is to improve the recurrent parent by only one trait. It should be noted that since the recurrent parent is already a proven variety or line, it is usually not necessary to conduct extensive performance trials once satisfactory introduction of the design. So you see what you're saying there? Basically, when you do it that way, it's good because you also don't got to do a whole bunch of testing of the, once you know it's in there, you ain't got to run a whole, everything else is already stuck and fixed. Remember that in practice, the objective is to improve the recurrent parent by one trait only. It should be noted that since the recurrent parent is already a proven variety or line, it is usually not necessary to conduct extensive performance trials. Once satisfactory introduction of the desired character has been achieved, previous data on the recurrent parent will indicate the benefits of the backcrossing line, assuming the added gene or linked genes are not detrimental. Wheat breeding in the greenhouse. Wheat heads are bagged for proper pollination. They only look pollinating one branch right there. Isolating the branch to pollinate it. A last consideration a breeder is aware of is the influence of environmental conditions on a backcrossing program, provided the expression of the character being transferred is sufficient for selection. Backcrossing can be conducted in any environment. For example, several generations may be grown per year in the greenhouse. Cool, man. That's it, man. Hope y'all learned something. Should you took your selection game to the next level, Bearded? Get you even more prepared.
Definitely give me a shit ton of stuff to think about, but helped answer some questions too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was legit.